Jimin Is A Witness. Jungkook hugs his mother after so many years. What does that say? The evening was not planned. No camera. There is no stage. Only the faint yellow light of the small house in Busan lit up quietly, and the sound of the sea breeze hitting the wooden windows. However, it was precisely at that moment, something that had been hidden for a long time finally broke slowly. Jungkook's first hug to his mother after so many years, witnessed firsthand by Jimin. The incident occurred at the end of their personal visit to Busan. Jungkook, who rarely talks about his family in public, chose to return home quietly. Together with Jimin, who is also from Busan, they came not as BTS superstars, but rather as two children who returned to the city that raised them. According to a source who did not want to be named, Jungkook has delayed returning home several times. Not because he doesn't miss, but because there is something he hasn't been able to deal with, the emotional connection between him and his mother. And that night, for the first time in a very long time, he stood at the door of his mother's house. Jimin, who accompanied Jungkook from afar, stood still at the end of a small path near the park where they often played in childhood. It does not go into the house, but he saw from a distance, from behind an autumn tree whose leaves began to fall, the moment the door was opened. According to the story of a neighbor who saw from the balcony of the house opposite, Jungkook's mother was silent for a few seconds. Her tears immediately fell at the sight of her youngest son standing with his head slightly lowered, hands trembled, and a barely audible voice when saying, "Yama, Jong Mal Mayanhi." Mom, I'm really sorry. What happened after that was not a long dialogue. There is no drama like in the movies. Only the slow steps of a mother approached, and Jungkook's hand, which had been grasping the mic on stage for millions of people, finally shaking while hugging the one person he misses the most. The hug was long, and as Jimin approached slowly to the fence of the house, he heard the quiet voice of the mother saying, "You never have to apologize. John Jungkook. I'm just waiting for you to come home, with a heart ready to embrace again." According to Jimin, who then spoke to a staffer in person, that moment was the most human and thrilling thing he had ever witnessed. "I think I came to Busan to accompany him to remember his childhood, but it turns out I watched someone find his house again." After the hug, they didn't immediately say much. Jungkook and his mother sat in the same dining room for 2 hours, only with a cup of tea and a hastily made snack. But from the look in both of their eyes, words were no longer a necessary thing. Jimin still did not enter the house that night. He sat in the rental car outside, looking out the dimly lit window at the silhouettes of two people, a mother and her son who are finally back. The next morning, before they return to Seoul, Jungkook briefly says to Jimin in the car, "I don't know what to tell the world about that moment. But I know I can say this to Lo, thank you for accompanying me secretly all this time. Without you, I would never have gotten to that door." And Jimin just answered while staring out the window, "I'm not taking you there. I just wanted to let you know that you are brave enough to walk alone." After that night of silence and tears, the atmosphere in the John family's small house changed. It no longer feels like a space that was once separated by time, ego, or fear. The following days in Busan are filled with simple things: a cooked breakfast together, the sound of little laughter in the kitchen, and occasional awkward conversations that slowly soften. Jungkook didn't talk much about his guilt during this time. But her mother knew, and she demanded no explanation. He just listened, serving Jungkook's favorite food and occasionally stroking his son's hair like before. "You don't have to be perfect to be my son. You just have to come with an honest heart," the mother said as she handed him a bowl of warm seaweed soup, which made Jungkook's eyes immediately teary. Jimin, who lives in a small inn near the beach, occasionally comes to visit. But he never took over the space between Jungkook and his mother. He was just present carrying their childhood favorite bingsu, sitting on the veranda, and occasionally take Jungkook to walk down the old sidewalk on the seafront. "I've never seen you this quiet, but it's also this quiet," Jimin said in one of the afternoon full of orange light. "I don't think I deserve to come," answered Jungkook slowly. But it turns out, coming is not a matter of merit, but of necessity. Some of the neighbors who recognized them did not dare to say hello directly. They know this moment is not for exposure, not for the media, not for the army. This is a sacred recovery room. But many of them secretly leave small gifts on the doorstep, anonymous letters, homemade rice cakes, and even old photos of Jungkook as a child that were kept by local residents. One of the photos shows little Jungkook asleep on his mother's lap at an old bus stop near the elementary school. When the photo was given to him, Jungkook just looked at it for a long time, then surrendered in his mother's arms again, this time not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. "I used to sing to the world," she whispered softly to her mother the night before returning to Seoul. "Now, I know my voice was first born from low." When the pickup arrived the next morning, the mother did not cry. He just stood in the doorway, waving his wrinkled little hand, as he uttered a phrase that sounded like a prayer. "Be great, not in the eyes of the world, but in your own heart." And Jungkook replied with one sentence, with a steady voice and teary eyes. "If I doubt, I will remember this house," and lo. Jimin, who sat next to Jungkook all the way home, just smiled. "You don't have to listen to details." He's seen enough. He knew that his friend, who had been running far to reach the highest stage, finally find a reason to stop for a moment and return to the first hug that once made her feel safe. And in that car, as the Busan morning sun began to slowly rise on the rear glass, Jungkook opens his phone. Staring at one photo, herself, her mother, and Jimin, sitting side by side at a simple dining table. Then he closed the screen and whispered, only to himself, "I'm finally home. Really going home." And in that moment, without spotlights, without audience cheers, without cameras, Jungkook is no longer just an idol. It's a child. It is a companion. He is someone who has learned that the greatest power, sometimes it comes not from the stage, but from the long-awaited embrace. And that story will always live on in the hearts of the army, not as news, but as a reminder that even the brightest star needs to return to the place where it first lit up. In a life that continues to move fast, where the camera and stage lights seem to never go out, the most important moments often come without warning. Like that night in a modest house in Busan, when Jungkook hugged his mother not as a superstar, not as a global icon, but as a child who finally came home. Dan dared to admit that his heart was once away. Jimin, who was secretly a witness, didn't have to speak. His being there calm, present, and understanding is a much deeper form of support than 1,000 sentences. Not all wounds need to be told. Some are quite healed in silence, with hugs, with presence, with tears that fall unnoticed. And in the midst of all the great achievements, this is perhaps the most important achievement in Jungkook's life. Reconcile yourself with the past and return home as himself. For ARMY, this story is not only heartwarming, it's also a reminder that behind all the song, dance, and fame, the idols they love are also human beings who need unconditional love. And now, after that hug, Jungkook didn't just return to Seoul with a backpack on his back. He came back with a lighter heart, and that soul slowly learns to breathe whole again, because sometimes one hug from mom is the most majestic stage that anyone has ever had. This story may never be posted on the official account. It will probably never be discussed on the live broadcast. But for people who know Jungkook, they know this is not just a meeting. This is recovery, and behind the glitter of the stage, millions of fans and an endless busy schedule, there is one hug that means much more than all the achievements of the world. The hug of a child who finally came home. And the mother who has been quietly waiting all this time unconditionally. ARMY may not be there, but through this story, they all cried. Not because it's sad, but as you know, even the brightest stars still need a home, and sometimes the house is only one step away and one courage to embrace back.